Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, across our beloved Kyber Empire. It's great to be in the Empire today. It's great having you guys stop on by here at the Grand Arena Coliseum, where we are going to be talking about something a little bit different. You know, lately I've been putting out deck builds, free-to-play guides and stuff like that, beginner guides. I'm going to do something a little different today where I don't know about you guys. For me personally, this card, you may have heard of it, Zabu, has been tearing up the competition and the meta. But I don't know if you're like me where, you know, Zabu's cool and all, but you don't have the right cards to really bang out the real big stuff. We're talking Wong, Darkhawk, Absorbing Man. Those cards I don't have, so I haven't been able to make the best Zabu cards. But what I want to talk about today are 10 cards that you can plug into your decks to help counter Zabus. They're going to be out there, especially if you're climbing to infinite. So let's talk and give you some ideas in case you haven't thought of some how to handle Zabu until maybe you get access to those bigger cards, or you might not even get Zabu since they're only in the season pass right now. Right now, the best thing I feel like I can kind of put together is something of this variety. Let me bring you on over here. Again, it's not going to be as great without Darkhawk, you know, Wong's, Absorb Man, those other amazing 4-cost cards that can get reduced by 2. And just a little heads up, just a reminder, Zabu ongoing effect takes your 4-cost cards, turn them into 2-cost cards, and the best part about it is you're able to hit the floor running. Once you get Zabu out, you're gonna be placing lots of cards. That's why I like to use things like Psylocke, for example, to maybe get Zabu out, you know, maybe a little bit quicker if possible, or trying to get some more energy to try to get as many things as possible onto the field. And that's what happens. Zabu's just spamming cards, and really I feel like Spider-Man plays a huge function, just locking out your opponent. So it can be really annoying, but there's a few things to keep in mind with these Zabu decks. Zabu decks, he's an ongoing card, but a lot of these 4-cost cards that you're throwing down onto the field, they are on reveal effects. So we're going to keep that in mind as we talk about the counters list. So if you have Zabu, great. I'm glad you're getting a lot of great Zabu cards, decks built. I need a few more. So in the meantime, I got to figure out ways how to counter it, and maybe you guys are in the same boat and find this helpful as well. So let's get this party started. The way I look at this is there's 2 tiers of defense that I like to have up against Zabu. We're going to talk about the tier 1 defense, which is the best defenses, and they also work well in a variety of different decks, just so you're not building a deck solely around Zabu, because you might not see Zabu every single time. You might come across folks like me that might not be using Zabu because they can't put some crazy decks out there to make their climb to infinite. Here's what we're going to have in tier 1. We're going to have about 4 or 5 cards in this tier 1 category. Rogue is going to be in the tier 1 category. With Rogue, the great thing is she's a 3-cost card, so when you see Zabu, you can usually react fairly quickly with Rogue. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of the Zabu cards they're playing are going to be on reveal cards. There's not a ton of ongoing effects that you're going to see from the Zabus. It's mostly ongoing, so you're going to be able to get out there and steal that ongoing effect. And the second you nullify, take away their potential of Zabu and cutting their cost of their hand in half, they're not doing a lot. Those 4-cost cards, they don't do a whole lot. You need to have a lot of them on the field, make a huge difference. Rogue is going to be great, and plus she fits in a variety of different decks as well. You're going to come across other folks with different ongoing effects like Dino, whatever the case might be. Iron Man, you can snatch those up too. So Rogue gives you flexibility to work with those other decks, but it's going to be great right now handling those Zabus sitting around. Moving on, let's keep talking about the tier 1 defense list. Sandman. Now, as we said, we talked about Zabu. Zabu, the core is Zabu, reduce cost, spam lots of cards. A lot of them have on-reveal abilities. Well, Sandman throws a huge wrench in that plan. Most decks aren't spamming multiple cards per turn, unlike Zabu. Sandman is going to slow down the Zabu roll. If you're playing Sandman and they can't put 4 cards down a turn, they're not doing a lot then. The only downside is it's going to hurt you a little bit, so it's okay. If you're playing a deck that's really only playing 1 card a turn, so is it really that big of a deal? Probably not. So you're slowing them down where their core gameplay is placing a lot, and you're bringing it down to 1 card a turn. They're kind of screwed. They better hope they have some Enchantress or something to shut down Sandman. That's really the only thing that they have in their back pocket. So Sandman's going to be very helpful. You just got to be cognizant you're putting this in a deck that doesn't need to spam a lot of cards per turn. Speaking of Enchantress, let's talk about her. She's getting some action as well with Zabu because, well, it's a 4-cost card. And if you're doing a Zabu mirror match, he who shall stop the Zabu ongoing effects usually is going to win. So Enchantress is really helpful. If you see a Zabu, boom, shut down their Zabu. Make sure your Zabu's in a different zone. You're golden at that point. But even in general, if you're not doing a Zabu mirror matches, just having Enchantress in your back pocket, kind of like Rogue, it's going to be in tier 1, mainly because you can use it in a variety of different situations, even outside of Zabu. With Enchantress, you're able to get her in there, and it's a pretty accessible card. Get her in there, shut down that ongoing effect on Zabu, move on with your life, And if the opponent can't do what they went into battle thinking, knowing that, hey, I'm going to play 5 million 4-cost cards that are now 2-cost cards, they don't have a great hand anymore. Chances are, Enchantress, if you play it at the right time, when Zabu's out there, they're going to get a nice retreat from the opponent. So those are kind of your tier 1 options. I'm going to throw Magneto in here as well in tier 1. Now, this is where we're going to kind of transition from tier 1 to tier 2 defense against Zabu. The problem with Magneto, it's going to be a late game play. It's not the end of the world. And the other problem is that Magneto's not going to be as plug and play as maybe Enchantress or Rogue or anything of that sort. But the great thing about it is you're able to move all those 4-cost cards, even though they're now 2. And when your opponent's trying to set the field in their favor and they're like, I got these zones locked down, if you could pull Magneto into a zone that they weren't expecting to drag those cards into, that could be huge for you. So the only problem is, can you fit him in there without interrupting whatever deck you're playing? Or you might want to build a deck around just moving cards around. Maybe you have like Kingpin, for example. Imagine if you had Kingpin. That's another card I don't have. I wish I had Kingpin. But if you had Kingpin, you could just pull all those cards into a certain zone where Kingpin is at. Oh man, that's going to set you up for some really upsetting plays for the opponent. So we're going to put Magneto on there. The rest of these that we're going to talk about are mostly, I'd say, tier 2 type of defense. Those are probably the best high-level options, but we got some other ones. And you might be wondering, why do we have Cosmo? We just established Zabu is an ongoing effect. So this is going to have no effect on Zabu. But what do we say? One of the branches of the Zabu deck builds is the fact that they have on-reveal effect. The key is going to be this. Luckily, Cosmo's a 3-cost card. You might be able to get Cosmo out before they start spamming all their on-reveal cards, like Spider-Man, Drax, Wong, whatever the case might be. If you could try to time out Cosmo well, where it's going into a zone, and you could activate before they activate their Spider-Man, or whatever the case might be, you're defeating another branch of getting those on-reveal effects going and rolling for them. So Cosmo, and again, it's one of those that you can keep in your back pocket for a variety of different decks out there, so it's not just a one-trick pony up against Zabu. You can get some good use out of Cosmo, like a lot of us already know. Moving on, next tier 2 defense, we have Juggernaut onto the field. So one thing I like about Juggernaut, it's an earlier game play. It's a mid-game play for the most part. Juggernaut, if you can get Juggernaut into a particular zone where they're trying to start spamming their cards and be like, I'm going for the zone. But if you threw Juggernaut, it's just going to kick all those cards out somewhere else. Like, nuh-uh, get that trash out of here. No, no, no. Imagine kicking Spider-Man into a zone that you already had locked down and they just webbed down a zone that you already had a couple cards in. They're wasting their time, right? So Juggernaut's gonna be helpful. Again, we're trying to disrupt them and try to throw their cards into zones they weren't anticipating. And if you start filling up zones they didn't want to throw in there, it's gonna cause problems. Or sometimes you might kick them into a zone where there's a bad location and they don't want to be in there. That's where Juggernaut comes really handy as well on top of that. I mean, I guess you can also pair that with Storm. I didn't put Storm on the list, but if you can do a Storm Juggernaut combo, that's gonna be nice to try to lock in a zone before they start spamming their 4-cost cards in there. It's kind of nice. Polaris. Now, I do recognize there's going to be some issues with this because unlike Magneto, which can move them, this is only moving 1 and 2-cost cards. So it's, again, there's going to be still some probably 1-2-cost card plays your opponent might be playing that's running a Zabu deck. And you might just want to, again, kind of move those cards around, you know, cause some disruption to their current plan. So, this might be more of a tier 3 type of thing, but I could see Polaris being a little bit helpful. Not my main go-to, but it's still another great option here. We got 3 more on the list. Leech. Now, Leech, what's the main problem? It's usually not played till turn 5. Now, there might be ways you can get Leech out a little bit sooner, but again, if you can get Leech to try to shut down all those abilities that's sitting in your opponent's hand, this goes for any deck. They're kind of screwed, and they better hope they just have enough raw power to get onto the field. That's where Leech will come in handy to try to give you the momentum by slowing down the power on those on-reveal effects that they're going to be trying to play. Imagine Absorb Man doesn't really do much if it can't do its ongoing effect, or the list goes on and on. There's not a lot of great cards without their effects. So Leech, very helpful. Problem's going to be timing and hoping that you're still in time to shut them down before they roll into that turn 6 play there. And moving on, Professor X. Again, Leech problem where it's kind of a little bit of a late game play. That's why it's in a tier 2 defense list. But if you could lock down a zone to stop them goofing around and placing cards in there when you have the lead, that's going to work well into your advantage as well. And then Arrow, we talked a lot of move stuff. We talked about Polaris, talked about Magneto, talked about Juggernaut. Arrow's kind of in that same neck of the woods where your opponent's trying to put cards in the right area. But if you keep moving them around willy-nilly, they have no plan. You keep messing up their plan. And this goes for any deck as well. Arrow's kind of like a mini leader as well, where, as long as you got the zones locked down, put them into a zone where they had already 3 cards. You put that 4th card in there. They can't do anything more in that zone. Or just getting them out of the zones that you want to utilize in. Like, imagine trying to get a Spider-Man out of the way throwing it into a zone that you already have. This can be played very well at the right time. Not as impactful. It has those anti-ongoing effects like we talked about with Rogue and a Sandman and all that other stuff from earlier on. And that right there is going to kind of wrap up our list here. For I think these are going to be kind of the general uses to try to counter Zabu right now. Now, hopefully you have Zabu and you maybe have Darkhawk, maybe have Wong, you maybe have Absorbing Man, all those great cards that pair so dang well with Zabu. But it's maybe nice to know if you're going up against a Zabu mirror match, maybe just throw in Enchantress in there. It's a 4-cost card and make it work. Stop their Zabu, let your Zabu go wild, pun intended. Or if you're just like me and you're just trying to make sure you don't run into a massive issue with Zabu, 1 or 2 of these cards in your deck could make the difference between a win, a loss, or seeing your opponent retreat away. But nonetheless, that's going to wrap it up for today. I hope RNG is bestowed upon you and you get all the cards that you need to dominate a Marvel Snap. Be sure to like, comment down below, subscribe to our ever-growing empire. And always remember, my friends, that it's great to be in the Empire today.
Oh, it's great to be in the Empire today. The sun never set.